Hi everyone, it's Rachel and Anthony from Don't Crop Me Now. It's about 11:30 on Sunday morning, and the main job we're going to be looking at today is sorting out our compost piles. So at the moment we have an active compost pile here. It's a rather large pile, and as you can see, it's really reaching the top. The problem we have is we've got nowhere to turn this to, because this compost pile, which I know it's got a lid on at the moment, that has all the compost that is ready to use, we don't quite have the space to put that into use at the moment. So we're in a bit of a dilemma, and what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to move the ready compost pile to a temporary station so we've got somewhere to turn this to. Obviously we put a lot on the last couple of weeks and this would drop a little bit, but we do have a lot more material that's coming in over the next few weeks, and we really need somewhere to put this. So by turning this from this section here, it will drop really quickly. It'll probably start to reheat up a bit, and it will mean that we have got an empty bay to start refilling with all the fresh material. So that's going to be the plan. We're going to use a 1 ton builder's bag, and I think if Anthony follows me, the plan is to clear an area. To be honest, I'll probably just move those 2 weed pots where I'm drowning some weeds, put the 1 ton builder's bag in there, or maybe I might even just move that chair and put it in there. It's only going to be there probably for maybe maximum of 3 weeks, because a lot of that compost will be used up in our potato tubs for planting, which really goes on from the end of this month. So we've got our temporary builder's bag in situ now. We have just zip tied it to the frame, just so it's a bit easier for us to physically put the stuff in the top without it collapsing. And then at the end we will put these in a little bit more firmly. If it's not filled anywhere near the top, we'll have to see what volume we actually get. So let's have a look at our compost that we're going to be moving. So as you can see, we've taken the lid off and we've taken the front off. That's why we've had a bit of a collapse here. And you can see there's lots of compost in here. There are still some rough bits. A lot of them are on this surface. Some of that is because bits that are from this compost fell through in. So what we will need to do is I will pick out any larger bits. That's obviously just fallen straight out of the compost. These are going to go back in the active compost pile. So a lot of this stuff here is from that sort of situation. Although we do our very best to try and make sure, if we do use a lot of cardboard, and we do try to make sure we take all the bits of sellotape off, but I'm sure I will find the odd bits of sellotape where we haven't managed to get everything off. So I'm going to drop them in that one there. So this is going to be our first task. A lot of this drier, sort of bigger material, we are going to break up a little bit, for example there, and that's going to go back on the heap. I don't worry too much about having some twigs and larger pieces of material in the compost, because that's really good for your compost structure and it will continue to break down on the ground. But I don't want too many large bits, because they'll be better back in the main heap. So now we've taken some of those larger twiggy bits off the top. You can see the actual structure of the compost, for example here. So you see it's really nice compost. It is actually quite moist under the surface here, because obviously this has had a lid on for a lot of the winter. A lot of this compost was just about ready before the winter really, so we didn't want complete wet weather permanently on this compost for that entire time. So hopefully now the majority of the heat will be like this, really sort of friable, usable compost. Firstly, just to excuse the Christmas top, it's got a little bit hotter with all that barrowing and moving things around, so I'll take my jumper off. It's just a great top to wear with the long sleeves at the allotment. We have moved about 4 barrows of our compost so far into the 1 ton bag, and the quality is absolutely amazing. We could not be more pleased with this. We put all sorts of stuff into our compost. So we use our chicken manure and bedding. We also put vegetable waste. We put weeds we pick off the plot. We put some friends and family have chicken or rabbit manure and bedding, or guinea pig manure. We use those as well. We collect vegetable waste from some local businesses, like a local cafe, and that includes things like coffee grounds and eggshells. We put a lot of cardboard in there as well. So there's all sorts of stuff goes into our compost. And let's have a look at some of the compost we have produced. So as you can see, it looks brilliant. You can see it's nice and crumbly. There are a few larger particles in it, but it's really good quality all-round homemade compost. So let's just talk a little bit about plastic and composting. Obviously, you do not want to be putting anything into your compost that is made out of plastic to break down, because that will not biodegrade and will end up in your compost and then in your soil. I am no expert on microplastics, but all soil, there's been quite a lot of research recently that says that all soil has quite worrying levels of microplastics in, and you don't really want to be contributing to that with your compost. I would say the last couple of years we have got stricter and stricter on how much we check the items that we are putting into our compost, but it's hard to completely make sure that you have removed every single tiny little bit of plastic item that might end up in your compost. So here's some of the things that we pulled out when we've been sieving our compost. And so you can see there's bits of netting here, little bits of plastic. Some of these are bits of sort of tape or wrapping tape that has been on the compost. Some of these bits will have blown into the compost that wouldn't necessarily be related to anything that we put in. For example, there is a little bit of string. So what I do is, when we're moving this, I do pull any of these bits out, because we don't want these going into the compost and therefore into our crops and our ground. We've got to the bottom, or nearly to the bottom of the pile. So you can see there's still quite a bit in there. What we decided to do is, this is some of the larger bits from when we've turned previously from this section here. So this was turned into here, probably November, I think it was before the winter. So this is relatively fresh. This is still autumn stuff really on the bottom. So what we're going to do is, we've just broke that up a little bit, and we're going to use that as really, I guess, to inoculate all those microorganisms and those worms, those composting worms, will just join everything in here. So the next task is to empty this into here, and then we will have a free bay to start building the next pile. But before we do that, let's have a look at the compost that we have got, which we'll mainly be using for our potatoes. So the 1 ton bag is solidly full. So there's definitely at least a good decent ton of homemade compost there, which is really satisfying. It's one of the things I actually enjoy the most really about Allotment here, and it brings together a lot of my geeky hobbies this. So really pleased with this one. We just need to get down to turning that all the pile, and then we can go home for a rest. Before we start moving all this, I just want to show you what can happen in a couple of days from stacking lots of fresh material. So if I just have a little bit of a movement in here, can you see all that steam coming out of there? That is warm. So it does not take very long for a compost heap to start heating up. It's 2.5 hours later, including a pretty decent lunch break, and we're just about finished. So as you can see, there's still a little bit left on this pile. At the bottom we had quite a lot of brown material, which was sort of dried beanstalks and things like that, which was they were a little bit matted at the bottom. We'd put a few too many without chopping them up well enough. So I've given them a good aeration really, so we're going to leave them as the bottom layer for this compost pile. And where Anthony is looking now is where we have turned this compost, and again there's quite a lot of twigs at the bottom of this here, but you know what, it's looking pretty good. This was last turned in November, so this is the stuff that went on really in that sort of period just in late autumn. And as you can see, it's not far off. There's still quite some chunky bits. It's not fully composted, but it's not that bad. We are expecting this will drop quite a bit because there was obviously all that really hot material that's now at the bottom of this pile. So we're going to get a lid on this and leave this one for a while, and we will then start filling up this one. So after a good few hours harvesting the compost and sorting out the new piles, we're really happy with our large amount of compost that we've got today. If you have enjoyed the video, please like, comment and subscribe. It only takes a minute, but it really helps our channel. Bye everyone.